All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Austin iOS Developer Meetup group. So we're here on the first Tuesday of every month from 7 to 9 in this room, sharing cool stuff about iOS. We typically have a wide range of presentations, from the technical stuff to design stuff, to networking, to show and tell sessions. So a lot of stuff going on. We're here because we love talking about iOS and nerdy stuff, so I know you guys all do too. I think the best thing about this group is getting to meet other people in the community that are developers. I always like to say that when your code's crashing, it's always nice to have somebody to go talk to. So make sure you take advantage, meet the people next to you. After our presentation, we'll have time to network, hang out for a while. We got this room until 9 o'clock. We also connect between meetings on our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/austin.ios.developers. My name's Anthony. I'm the one that spams with all the emails. And I'm very excited for our presentation tonight, which is going to be from Chaotic Moon. So they are huge, very established group that does a ton of development. They've built some really cool stuff. I'll let them give the full rundown. But there should be a lot of really cool things you guys are going to hear and learn today. I think we got some cool stuff to show you, so I'm excited to introduce them.
So hi everyone, my name is Shannon. I'm the recruiter for Chaotic Moon. I brought with me Elliot and James tonight. They're going to talk to you about some of the cooler, sexier technologies and projects that we work on. For my side, if you haven't heard about Chaotic Moon, we are a creative technology studio here in Austin, as we like to call ourselves the creative technology studio. Our mission is to deliver excellence through user-centric design. That is our goal, that is our focus, and we deliver that through everything. Software products, mobile applications, solutions, strategy engagement, as well as hardware. In terms of our clientele, it's very diverse. We work with healthcare, enterprise, retail, entertainment, as well as the energy sector. So really no limits to where we'll go and where we'll take things. From my side, I am looking for senior developers right now, as well as solution architects. So if you're interested in that type of opportunity, please come see me. We also do a lot of contract work, so if you just like to do something on the side when you have time, definitely touch base with me afterwards. I got my cards, would love to hear from you as well. I'm gonna turn it over to Elliot and James to get to the sexy stuff.
Sexy stuff. Awesome. Before I start, I want to give a shout out to Amir. Can you stand up? Stand up. Look at this. This man just launched his very first iOS app in the store. It's called Sunwalk. It's not indexed yet. You can't download it. But remember, later tomorrow morning.
Once it is indexed, it'll be scorching hot. Oh man.
There it is. All right, first, while working at Chaotic Moon, I get to work on a lot of high-profile apps that are super fun, super sexy. We have apps that literally have more users per day than some apps have downloads. It's fantastic. Right now, I'm working on the Marvel comic book reader. It's Marvel Unlimited, so people can subscribe and get unlimited, pretty much the entire catalog of Marvel comic books. And they get new new versions of comics delivered to them. It's pretty sweet. Right now we're working on redoing the reader and updating it for the 6 Plus. This next presentation is actually kind of a case study on an app that's currently under NDA. I can't talk about it, but it may or may not be for a giant company that has a lot of animated characters that just released a video app that combines a bunch of video services. Google Play, Apple, and Walmart. I don't know if y'all heard about it. But if you did, you can research it and figure out which one it is. All right, so I want to talk about, super exciting, our caching strategy across the app and why, how we started with core data and then we moved to something else to improve our process. And actually, it turns out to improve the app. Cool. So core data has, I don't know how many of you guys have used core data, or some of you have maybe avoided it, I don't know. It has some pretty neat advantages. You can do fetch results controllers, so it has ways to update the UI when another thread changes the database or your network call changes the database. You can insert, move around delete rows from a collection view or a table view. I'm personally in love with it. I don't have to mess around with arrays. I can just get this thing, it's great. It does relational queries. So if you have an app that needs a SQL database, like Core Data is an absolute great way to go. If you need to do, if you're building a lot of if the user's building a lot of objects and then you need to aggregate those, it's really fantastic. One thing that I've noticed is Apple isn't moving away from it. So if you want to be completely in the Apple infrastructure, like Core Data is your data store, because it doesn't seem like they're going to introduce another one, an alternative. They seem to be pretty married to it. They're, porting everything to Swift, so you can already do that. And I think it's going to stick around for a long time. The other cool thing is it persists to disk without you having to deal with it. You can, of course, fire up your own SQL database if you want, or you can take an object and serialize it and write it down, write it someplace, but then you have to worry about file locks, you have to worry about serializing and deserializing. I don't like that stuff. It's boring. And then you have to figure out how to query it. Like you have to pull all those guys in memory and you have to shuffle through them in memory. Core Data takes care of a bunch of that stuff. It has some disadvantages though. Threading. I don't know how many of you people have made a network call and then modified an object that you had a hold of in the view controller and your app crashed, or maybe it didn't crash. Maybe you shipped the app and every third user it crashes for and it doesn't crash on your device. And this happens all the time. There are some best practices to get around this of varying complexity. I've done 3 or 4 apps that have used Core Data extensively as their caching mechanism and for creating stuff on the phone. You can pass around identifying markers. You can pass around an ID if you want, but it's better to pass around other things so you can get specific objects out. You can use the same persistent store coordinator. People talk about that, and then it's fine. You can actually do crazy stuff like have 2 persistent core coordinators and have 1 thread that reads, and then you have as many threads as you want that write. Managing that is pretty freaking exciting. And a lot of the wrappers for Core Data don't handle that particularly well. One thing that we ran into, because at Chaotic, we are trying to move away from waterfall. It's very easy for us to have a client come in and have the design team pound on something for 6 months. They come up with 16 dev decks and they say, here's 2 weeks and you guys can get this done, right? It only took us 6 months, you guys can knock it out, you guys are the best, right? But the problem is we would find UX issues that we would have to solve and then we'd have to kick it back to design, but they've already moved on, right? Like they've closed this project, they're done with it. So we're trying to move to a more agile mentality. I know you hear that a lot in software development. This particular client was totally devoted to going agile. And one of the ways they did that was they wanted to release a new version every 2 weeks at the end of every single sprint. So that meant every single sprint, we were having, if we made a database change, we had to write a migration script. And then our awesome QA department that never complains about having to work late nights because of stuff I've messed up, they had to choose every single possible upgrade path, right? And we ended up like dropping off certain versions, and if you were too late, we would end up just wiping the store and starting over. It just slowed down our process way too much, just managing this cache. Like, it wasn't that important to us, and we weren't really creating anything on the phone. The other downside is everything has to inherit from managed objects. I just think it's a bummer. Managed objects is kind of this magic thing that you don't control, you can't see into, you don't know what it's doing really. It's obviously doing some magic stuff because I can tell Core Data just to save it and then I can get it back out. But we're trying to avoid that. Deserializing from JSON was totally lame. We had a bunch of object for key. That key is some magic string. Maybe we created a pound of find, so the magic string is in one place. We'll call it constants.h, and you just import that everywhere, and then everyone can use it. That's cool, so I figured that out. The other issue is you can't store null in Core Data. So now I have to write some sort of wrapper for dictionary that returns the correct empty type of whatever I'm trying to get out. It's totally lame. I hate seeing that code. It's in everyone's code that uses core data. I just got totally tired of it. Setting up the core data stack in your application is pretty lame. I mean, it's not lame, right? You can just take the code that's on Apple's website, copy and paste into app delegate, go home, like you're done, fire up a model, you're done. Like, why am I even copying and pasting this? Like, I don't want to have to deal with it. There are ways around it. You guys might have heard of Magical Record. That takes that 3 or 4 methods down to 2 lines. Freaking great, love it. You still have to deal with all the migration. That only takes care of the setup stuff, and some of the querying is a little bit easier. So we decided to make some changes. So we decided to go ahead and try out just caching the JSON response. It turns out that Android, I know you guys don't like to talk about the dark side, right? They've been moving this direction for probably 2 years. It started off with Volley, and then they did retrofit, and there's a new one that Google came out with that I forget the name of. I do iOS, I apologize. So we decided to try this strategy. And another key feature of this strategy, we're already using AF networking. So if you guys haven't experimented with, how many of you guys have used AF networking? Awesome, cool. For the people that haven't, fantastic. For the people that haven't used AF networking, what it is, it's a really well thought out wrapper for creating your own NS URL request. It's block based. V2 is even better than V1, which was really good. I highly recommend it if you're going to make network calls. Like, pull in AF networking and give it a shot. Like, building your own NS URL requests, and now they have queues, right? So you can wrap that up, OAuth stuff if you want to. Like, I totally recommend it. But one thing that it does, which is awesome, is out of the box without you having to do anything, is it uses NS URL cache, which is why NS, has the NS prefix. This is an Apple thing, right? So you aren't writing your own cache, which is fantastic, because I don't like that either. Because figuring out what to kick out of cache is difficult and when to do it. And the cool thing about AF networking is it allows you per request if you're V1 and per serializer if you're V2 to change the behavior of the cache for that particular call, which is great. So some pieces of the application, like let's say for the Marvel app, the Spider-Man from 1972, that collection is never changing, right? So I can cache that until I run out of disk space, right? Until I need to push it out into something else. However, the user's library, where they're either purchasing new comics or they've decided to download a comic on another version of the app on another device and I need to sync that, all of that stuff needs to be really up to date, especially once you start charging users for stuff. They want to see that stuff show up immediately. So for those, we won't use the cached response. We'll go ahead and make the network call every time. It's a little bit of churn, but being up to date offers a huge value to our customer. But our standard practice sort of when we fire everything up is to cache as much as we possibly can. I'm definitely not going to read y'all this slide. Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know how many of you guys have made HTTP requests. Right now, as it stands, it's really hard to write a mobile app without utilizing some sort of third-party API. Maybe you wrote the API, maybe you want your app to tweet, maybe you want to post stuff on Facebook. It's really hard to do anything without connecting to the internet and sending or getting something. One cool thing that we're doing at Chaotic is we've actually started a book club. And the first book that we're reading is REST in Practice. We deal almost exclusively with RESTful APIs. You had like a SOAP one, right? Was that you? No, all right. Somebody else had it.
Somebody did.
Yeah, turn that job down. Don't take that.
Yeah.
So we're all reading this together, and so we will read 3 or 4 chapters, and then we'll come together as a development group. These are just the developers, but it's all of the developers. It's not just iOS. It's not just Android. It's not just our web guys. All of them come together and discuss, and our senior architects will lead the discussion, but it's very much open table. I really like the share of knowledge that we get, it's really encouraged, and now it's institutionalized, which is fantastic. So back to NSURL cache. So the first one here, protocol cache policy. If you don't do anything to NSURL cache, if you don't do anything to AF networking, and you don't do anything to NSURL cache, this is what you get, which is pretty powerful. It's the most complicated one, but it's definitely the one I recommend if you want the most flexibility. What this does is it adheres and it listens to the time to live headers from your responses, so you can actually control your caching policy for your apps from your network, from your API, which is super awesome, right? Like, let's say you ran a Super Bowl ad and then you don't want the servers to crash because everyone fires up their iOS app, right? You can control, like 3 days earlier, you pushed out stuff that says, hey, cache this through the Super Bowl, and then we can move on to our regular stuff. And you can do that without any changes from the store or anything like that. The second one is just ignoring. That's the one I was talking about, where it's like, you need the most up-to-date version you possibly can, so just ignore it. The other ones have some slight variations, but the first two are the ones that we at Chaotic and I've used most in my other apps. Cool. So the downside, so when we were working on Marvel, everything was cool. We didn't make any changes to the caching policy at all. iOS 8 came out, all of a sudden we get these crazy 1-star reviews that say, your app is now taking up 2 gigs of space on my iPad. So if you downloaded all of Marvel Comics 4 times, you would get 1.75 gigs. And we couldn't figure out what it was. And I was baffled. The ticket got assigned to me, and I was like, this is insane. Like, this is crazy. We're not doing anything. At most, we were caching 10 books and some images, right? Like, that's not 2 gigs worth of stuff. It turns out in iOS 8, NSURL cache had a bug where it would never evict anything. It would just keep growing and growing and growing, and if you told it to write to disk, like we did, it would just dump all of that to disk, and it would just keep doing that. And the only way to empty that cache was to erase the app. What's really cool is they fixed that in 8.1, so you guys don't have to worry about it. It took a ton of digging and like 3 days to figure out that that's cool. I did improve some, we had some images hanging out, but definitely not 2 gigs worth of stuff. Cool. So you can subclass NSURL cache, so it can do its own thing. If you want to change its eviction policy, you can do that. Best of luck. You guys are on your own. If you want to change when and how it writes to disk, you can do that. Cache has this you could pass in objects where you give them a weight, and then you can read that weight and evict stuff, so you can write custom policies. We rarely do that. Most of the time, we just do it from the API that's exposed with the policies and go forth. Yeah, and you can choose to write this. I've covered that. Cool. So awesome. This is a really cool article I found. The first half, it's about AF networking and caching. The first half is about AF image, which is AF networking's subclass of image. So it'll cache the images for you, and you can pass it a placeholder image while your image loads. It's pretty sweet stuff. But that's not as interesting as the second half is about the NSURL cache. They go into really great detail about the different policies and what you can and can't do in subclasses. It's really good. It's not a very long read either, and they have some pretty good code examples. So, cool. So I told y'all that I don't like writing deserialization code and serialization code. It's boring, it's a lot of typing, and it's not fun typing, right? I'm not solving a problem. I'm just banging on my keyboard to get this thing out of a dictionary. So we decided to move to Mantle. Mantle's pretty cool because it cuts down on a lot of that stuff. So you can go to their GitHub page. You can also just Mantle iOS, it'll get you there. Cuts down on deserialization code, cuts down on serialization code. Oh, dude. So NSCoder. I don't know how many of you people have had to write in the NSCoder methods for an object. Hands. Awesome. So was it awesome? Okay. So did you have to do it twice? Did you have to type the exact same thing twice, getting in and out of disk? Like, crazy, it just blows my mind. Like, and that's just hanging out in your just hanging out in your objects. It's way at the bottom, right? It doesn't give you any value. You don't have to do that, which is freaking great. Cool. And you can do, when you're reading in JSON, I'm kind of running through these quickly. I have examples for these, but for when you're when you're deserializing JSON, you can deserialize with the same response. You can inflate different classes. Pretty cool. And you have a bunch of transformers that are built in already to deal with, say, URLs. Or, like, let's say you have a date and it's a very specific date format. You can just pass the date format into the date formatter and it does its thing. It's really great. Cool. Downside, I know, I mean, it's a big deal about not inheriting from the same thing, but you inherit from MTL model. It's a little less magic than a managed object. And you can just pass it around. So you can pass it across threads and nobody crashes. It standalone, it's not tied to the database. So if you get an object that inherits from this class, you can modify it, you can do whatever you want to, and you don't have to worry about how another thread is modifying the underlying store at all. So here, custom transformers. There's the NSURL transformer, and then this one is really cool. This second one, or this third one, is actually, so in this example, there's a state, right? And it's an enum property. And it's pretty neat because you can actually use this transformer to take the word open or to take the word close and translate that into your enum, right? You don't want a string that's hanging out that says open or a string that's hanging out that says close. Like, you want your enum because that makes it easier for you to read, and you can do equals equals and it's great and everyone's happy, right? And so with these 2 lines of code, you can do that. You don't have to write string is equal to, and then when a third state comes along, kind of open, in limbo, you don't have to then, you probably did if else, right? You probably did like, if string is equal to open, else, close. Like, now in limbo comes along and now everything is closed, even though it's in limbo. You can just add another one. It's pretty awesome. Cool. Serialization is just auto-magically. Like, if you have an object and you want to write it to disk, you just tell it to serialize and you write it. It's freaking awesome. The other cool thing is if you name all of your properties the same as they're named in the JSON, you can just ship it off to the network immediately, which is great. So if you fill in a form, you can just have your object be populated and then run it through this and ship it off. If you need custom custom serialization, you just implement this class method. The keys in the dictionary are the names of your properties, and then on the right are the names that it spits out in the JSON. So here we have created at, it's camel case because we're iOS developers and we love camel case, right? But some of your API designers are like, I love snake case. So you can just do that, and you don't have to remember. You type that once, or you copy and paste it from his email, and you're done. Another cool thing is, so there's me user, right? You assign null to it, it doesn't get shipped off to the API, which is great. So that means you can have relationships in your app that you don't have on the API, and you can just ship them off, and your network guy doesn't complain. It's fantastic. Cool. We parse this is the polymorphism. So we have, if you got a response from the network and it had an image URL, it's going to inflate a picture message. If you had body, it's going to inflate a text message, which is pretty sweet, right? So here it's a really simple case. It's one Boolean, right? Like, is equal to, or not nil, in fact, but you can make that Boolean and you can make that logic as complicated as you need to figure out what kind of class it is. If you need to compare multiple properties, what time it came in, where it came from, whatever, you can do that here and keep that all in one place. And this is in your object, which is even better. Like, this isn't hanging out in some object transformer. This is just right there. It's great. So we did all this work, right? And we had to do a little bit of convincing, right? Because when we changed backing stores, it cost everybody money. So we had some concerns. Number one was speed, right? is like the serialization of these objects, or the deserialization of these objects every time. Is that going to show up? Like, am I going to end up with blank view controllers and then like don't do anything and then magically happen? That happens on Android sometimes. Luckily that wasn't the issue. The bottleneck on the app was 100% the network calls, right? And figured that. That's why we did this in the beginning. So the deserialization wasn't an issue. We had relatively large lists, like 400, and it was fine. Relatively complicated objects too. Relatively complicated object graphs. It was cool. You can't do relational queries. It turns out most of the time we don't need to. We do simple, maybe ordering queries, or we do things like, I want to get all of the objects that have a certain type, right? You can do that pretty easily if you have an array, enumerate through blocks. And as long as your collections aren't gigantic, you really don't need this relational stuff. And a lot of times, if we were doing a serious relational thing, we have to go back to the API anyway. So we're wiping out the cache. So we didn't need to leverage that power. No fetch results controllers, and kind of made me sad, but it's all right. Cool. So these are the advantages. It cut down on our cross-threading crashes that we couldn't reproduce, but our PMs kept getting upset about. It made the app feel snappier because you weren't waiting on network calls. You didn't get the loader, right? Which no one likes. And it made putting out new versions of the app so much easier. We didn't have to, every time we made a change to core data in a commit, we didn't have to then mark it down somewhere and be like, hey guys, just remember before we release this, we need this crappy regression, and oh yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and write the migration script, which I never do, and then I have to do it the day before we launch, and it's lame. It cut down on a bunch of that, which was awesome. There are some alternatives to what we did. So it's funny, I was actually preparing for this presentation today, and I was typing this slide, and literally as I'm typing it in our developer chat room, someone was like, hey, have you guys seen Yap? And I copied this exact URL out of our chat room, which is really great. I really enjoy an environment where people are like, hey, this is cool, and then all of a sudden, the conversation went on for probably 4 hours as people were reading through the documentation, copy and paste, oh, I love this snippet, oh, this is great, oh, this works like fetch results controller, this is fantastic. So as I was talking about it, or as I was doing this, we were talking about this via our chat. It's really great. The first one is Couch Lite. I don't know, there's CouchDB. It's a NoSQL database for web, right? Like that's where it started. Now they've ported it. It used to be called TouchDB. They've now ported Couch Lite to Android and iOS. It's really cool. It's super easy to use. Like you have an object, you store it. The really, really neat thing is it'll automatically sync with your CouchDB on your server. So it'll kick you back merge conflicts, and you have to deal with those. But if you're already running CouchDB, it's a really, really great thing to use. Yap is another document NoSQL store. It doesn't have, to my knowledge, it doesn't have a backend one. Both of these, Realm and Yap, are both NoSQL stores, so you can just save documents, get them back out. The kind of queries are a little bit different for all three of these guys. They don't do standard SQL queries like you're used to. They do MapReduce. However, Couch realizes that people don't, myself included, right? I kind of forget how to do it and how it works because they don't do it all the time. They have great documentation on how to turn a SQL query into a Couch query. And the concepts they talk about pretty much work for all three, which is awesome. So as if that weren't enough, one day I came in and I had a message from our client. So our client had a technical lead on their side, right? Came in, chat was open, clicked on it, and it said, no more new classes in Objective-C. We're going all Swift. This is a really big app that's really popular, has a ton of users, has a ton of press, has a ton of money behind it, and now it's like, absolutely, we're gonna use Swift. It's like, okay, you guys are sure about this. Like, view controllers, everything Swift. And so this was Swift 1.0, which makes it even more exciting now. So I'm gonna talk about the 2 or 3 things that I didn't like, and then some solutions. My number one, the Pyramid of Doom. I don't know how much of Swift y'all have written. This sucks. You can try to get around it with question marks and exclamation points, but eventually you end up with a pyramid of doom somewhere. This is my biggest beef. Like, this just sucks. Like, this isn't valuable to me, and look how many lines it takes just for me to do a print. Well, in this pretty degenerative example, but like, this is a prit lane. If not, this stuff crashes. It's totally lame. The other one is it's not nil safe. But Objective-C returns nil by convention, and that means a crash. And so these are from methods, right? These aren't from properties. If I want to return nil in Objective-C, that's how I tell you I want a no-op, right? Like, here's an object, it's nil, just do whatever you want to with it, and you won't know the difference. Not the case. Sometimes we ended up writing wrappers, like Swift safe wrappers that had the like nil scary stuff of grabbing the shared instance of things. A lot of times those are nil. And so in the bridging header, we would only expose this Swift safe wrapper, and then the actual sort of stuff that was causing the app to crash would happen in Objective-C. So it would be cool. But we had to write that stuff, and it was just kind of a pain. However, and every version of Xcode broke our old Swift code. It sucked. And so it didn't just break our old, like, that's cool, like if it's just you, right? And you upgrade and it's like, oh, it won't compile, that's fine. Type, compile, commit, done, ship it, that's cool. But the thing is, we have four developers. I was in Austin, 2 were in California, 1 was in the south of France. We have a build server in Mexico, a build server in Austin, Texas, and another build server somewhere in LA, and I don't know where it was, but it was building for the App Store. So we had to coordinate all of those things. Even worse, while we were doing this, we had like multiple features going on, and so when you had hot fixes for a specific feature, you had to make sure you're using the correct version of Xcode. It was lame. However, Swift 1.2 to the rescue. It's pretty cool. So look, they collapsed it just to a line of doom. Much happier. No more pyramid. And you have nullability annotations. It doesn't fix the null return type, but it does fix a lot, having to write all those bangs for using properties that are declared in Objective-C. So I've talked about a lot of technical stuff. It's been boring. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. And now we got Elliot. He's going to talk about the super sexy stuff. And I'll let him take the floor.
Nice. Like a high school picture. That's all right.
I just searched your name.
I'm like, actually, how did you get that?
Google.
Oh, okay. Nice. All right. 1 second here. So that mantle solution, that was not a goofy one. Definitely no mini effort there. All right, I'll stop talking about shit I can't talk about. Let's see here. All right. A recap.
A classroom.
Boom. Sweet. All right. So, kind of before I get into this, one of the things I wanted to touch on was one of the biggest, best things about coming to Chaotic Moon were the types of projects you get to work on and the exposure. I've been at product companies before. I feel like just working on, a variety of whatever comes your way has so much value in it. So if you're kind of like just starting out or you're looking for a job, I'd highly recommend, whether it be like somewhere like Chaotic Moon or Jackrabbit Mobile, that you look to go to a place that sort of has projects, because you'll see like the learning curve is insane, and it's just great exposure and really, really good for your career. And we try to do stuff like James mentioned as a team, which is awesome. We have the technical book club that he mentioned. Currently Rest in Practice. What was the next one? 50 Shades of Swift? Okay. All right. Couldn't remember. That was my suggestion. But all right. Anyways. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a project that I worked on with IBM. specifically their Watson technology. And again, this is like another cool example because this isn't your typical corporate app, right? IBM came to us. They were wanting to showcase Watson at a big event in New York back in October. And they're like, hey, we have a few partner companies, and we want you guys to be one of them, be there at the showcase. What can you guys do that's badass that uses Watson? So I'll kind of get into that here in a little bit. First, I want to kind of go over like, what is Watson? It's not just a computer that was designed to win Jeopardy or consume the Urban Dictionary and curse back at its researchers, which it totally did that because I was there. And it said bullshit to me. Not to me, that was cool. But anyways, I didn't have a problem with it. But it's basically a cognitive technology that can understand, kind of wade its way through ambiguity, right? And understand context. And that's what cognitive computing is all about, right? It makes context a computable property. So Watson, so the example you guys might be familiar with, the Jeopardy thing, that was using Watson's Q&A module. And what that does is it's unlike your standard thing where you have a database of information and you ask it a question and it kind of goes and looks through that database and looks at keywords and just pulls you back up an answer. What the Watson module is actually doing is going in and understanding the question in the context that you asked it, understanding the natural language of what you gave it, and it will go through and sort of formulate like various hypotheses on how it should understand what you've asked it, and then it'll sort of go through all the documentation that it has available to it, kind of looking for things like trying to understand things in terms of like euphemisms and colloquialisms and things like that to sort of dig down and really find you the answer that you're looking for, and it'll return you several answers with confidence levels for each. So that's one tool that it uses. All the rest of the tools are encapsulated in this program called Bluemix, which has these modules here, which basically it's like an a la carte selection of cognitive modules that kind of like help you achieve your specific goal. So the two that I've circled in red, personality insights and concept expansion, were the two that were used for this project. I'll get to the project overview here in a minute, but personality insights basically will consume, a block or blurb or pages, however much text you give it, and it will sort of analyze the emotional temperature of that block of text and return you back an analysis, based on the big 5 personality traits. It'll tell you the percentages that were present, that it thought were present in each of them, and it has like sub-traits. So it actually gives you like 96 data points, which is pretty cray-cray. And then concept expansion, what that does is kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the euphemisms, things like that. You can feed it stuff like that, and it'll try to understand it and understand it in sort of the natural way. So like if I say, couch potato, it's not going to be like looking for a potato that is literally like of type couch, right? It's like, oh, I'm looking for somebody who's like lazy and likes to watch TV all the time. Just like, definitely not me. Like if I say like, what's up? It's not gonna be like, oh, the sky. It's gonna say, oh, that means like, what are you doing currently? What's going on with you? So pretty awesome. So when we first got our Watson instance, before we really defined what our project was gonna be, we decided to kind of like experiment around with those two tools a little bit, see, does this really work? And we kind of did these 3 little quick experiments, which yielded pretty amazing results. So the first thing we did, client interactions, right? We took some of our email chains from clients, like communication, and fed that in, and actually like it really kind of nailed it head on. Like, what are the tone of some of these emails? How conservative are they? How neurotic are they? It's things like that. The next one, team health. Again, as James mentioned earlier, we have like an awesome chat room system, right? So we decided, hey, let's go into one of our projects and let's take all the messages from like a day and put them in here and see, what the mood looks like for this project. And let's look at it like day to day and see how it's changing. And it's like, when we were like getting close to releasing in the App Store, all of a sudden like happiness is like, woo, way up, and people, excited because everybody's like cheering and stuff like that. If there was a big bug, well, actually, there are never bugs, so I guess that wasn't a problem. Yeah. Commercial success. This was pretty cool. We actually fed TV transcripts into user modeling, and then had somebody watch the commercial and gauge their response versus what Watson said was sort of the tone of the transcript, and it like correlated really well. And so the thing with this, you can probably imagine, like, what if like an advertising agency were to use this or something, and instead of doing like 4 panel studies, they might only need to do 2 or something like that, because the writers could be feeding this stuff into Watson like right away and getting instant feedback on how awesome or how terrible of a job they're doing, right? So it's definitely sort of profound, even from the get-go. So our goal was to help out at the Watson event, the one in New York. I mentioned, like, basically there's 10 partner companies that were all going to have demos. There was another piece, a special event called the Cognitive Cook-Off. So basically, what this was kind of like an Iron Chef style competition based on recommendations from Watson. So if Watson's like, oh, I think, barbecue flavored Cheerios are going to be like awesome, then they're like, make it. And they're like, okay, we're going to make it. And then people taste it, and that was all great. But it's like, one of the things that we were like, well, how can we help maybe, not decide the winner, but maybe gauge like the mood and what's going on, and people's thoughts and feelings about the food. So what we decided to do was basically visualize the aggregate of everybody's emotions through the physical and the digital realms, and again, get those like 5 personality traits and kind of see, what the shifts are as people are trying the food and everything. This is sort of an early rendering of what it was to look like. And it pulls from, so when I say aggregate, so we did the digital, so like we were monitoring, we were scraping the tweets and all that stuff. And that would be fed into user modeling. And then we also had, we used a special facial detection SDK there. So we had cameras set up all around the food stations. And this SDK, we modified it for this purpose. It could basically see, whether somebody was smiling or not, or how many glances they were giving the food, or how long they were paying attention, things like that. So that kind of gave us, an idea of the physical. So those 2 things were to feed into this visualization, as well as a custom iPad app that was going to be more of a interview, like a personal interview type experience. So this app would you would have a real conversation with Watson. So every time you answered a question, we built a custom like proxy API. So we would be sending data to this API, and then that would be responsible for communicating with Watson, coming back, formulating new questions, and so forth. So it was pretty cool. And then at the end, it would provide you like a small screen of your results, but then that would be piped into the visualization as well. So then I'm going to talk about some development challenges. I did all of the iPad app, and another colleague did most of the large visualization. It was an OS 10 app. I helped out a little bit on that as well. So, development challenges. There were none. Kidding. All right. So first I'm going to start about the OS 10 challenges. That's another cool thing is like, you definitely have the option to specialize in a platform here at Chaotic Moon if you want. Or you can kind of like branch out a little bit, whether, it be like, in this case, OS 10, it's still at this point, it's Objective-C, but it's, different platform, kind of cool to like get in there and mess around with that. So some of the challenges here. So at first we tried on that, I'll go back to that big visualization. So you can imagine like the first idea was to say, okay, all those little nodes were going to be individual people. Like everybody that's tweeting about this, it's all gonna like, slowly build up on the screen, and we were going to have, so this was going to be done in, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Scene Kit or Sprite Kit. This piece was Scene Kit, and the idea was like, we'd have a camera, and then we'd have it flowing through in the Z direction as these things kind of built up, and then it would like amalgamate into this massive constellation type piece, which was going to be awesome. Well, that was like very ambitious because basically what ended up happening, once we had over, I don't know, several hundred nodes, the frames per second dropped considerably. The app also crashed like every 5 minutes, so that wasn't cool. And again, Sprite Kit, SK shaped node wouldn't have been possible, that crash, without it and its memory leaks. So thank you, SK shaped node, for making our lives miserable. So at that point, it's like, well, okay, we might not be able to draw all these things as Sprite Kit nodes. So what should we do at that point? So then we went back, kind of talked to our creative folks again, and we sort of redesigned the look of it. And as you can see here, like, it's easier to read. You know, you can kind of see the emotions clear. You know what's going on. There's a smaller amount of nodes, and basically what would happen is these things would shift back and forth as the information was updating. So, you know, as neuroticism went from relaxed to the other side, it would just kind of like slide over. It's like, well, that was really cool, but the only issue here is that we kind of got away from the idea of having, you know, a visual indication of the data points building, right? So changing density over time. Well, let me back up for a second. So basically, how we got by actually having to draw this stuff was then our creative department rendered us some awesome animation. Just, you know, basically handed us a sequence of PNGs. And so we had our sprite nodes, but we didn't have to use shape node anymore or anything like that. We just did the animate with textures. And then we colorized them ourselves to match the scheme. So that worked out perfectly. No more crashes, which was awesome. So I felt like I was going to stay employed for a little bit longer, which is cool. So the second point, like what I just touched on, how do we provide, you know, the illusion? I say illusion in quotes because it's not really. It is. We are getting more and more data over time, but we don't have it tied. We can't tie that to just a PNG. So what we ended up doing there is we said, hey, you know, can you give us like 4 animations, 4 sets of animations with denser and denser amounts of nodes? And they're like, yeah, sure. They whipped that up for us, and then so we wrote a custom, basically a custom class that used a timer to say, okay, hey, it's been 30 minutes. Swap out the texture animations on these nodes and give the appearance that they're kind of growing. And it actually correlated pretty well with the data that we were receiving, so it all worked out. The last one is this thing even on, like, so we were originally jamming every single source into the data set that we were visualizing, and the problem was it became really hard after like a ton of points were on there, hard to really see it moving around a whole lot. It kind of like was pretty stationary. So we're like, well, that's not really, you know, what we want. We want people to interact and kind of like not see their results right away, but at least have the sense that like, hey, you know, this is based on like what's currently going on. So what we ended up doing then at this point is sort of cycling through the sources. So it'd show you the tweets, then it'd show you the camera SDK data, and then it'd show you like the interview and all that stuff. And then as it was cycling, you know, you could see like how much those things were changing, and they would slide, and it was animated really nicely. And so it provided like kind of a mesmerizing experience. It was pretty cool. So on to the iOS app challenges. So the problem, the first problem was we had, let me skip to this. So we had something similar to the big visualization in the iPad app. And as you can see, you have, you know, several components here. You have the rows of numbers, the major traits, and then the minor traits. And then the node gardens, and those things were being swapped out as well. So it's like, okay, we're keeping track of like all these things, and it kind of basically just boils down to good architecture. So at that point, we you know, subclass to the point to where we just had panels of we could just instantiate panels of those things and stack them. And the app didn't care how many there were or what the names of the titles were or anything like that. It just simply pulled down the information from the API and just stacked them up, sized them. It was great. So that was kind of, getting over that hurdle, just trying to figure out something like that's a little bit more abstract, how to really have some good architecture behind it. There was a pulsating brain, this thing, that was like what Creative's vision was is that this would they wanted the user to feel like it was talking to them, and then when you talk to it, they wanted there to be some interaction. And so when we're starting to think about how we're going to animate this in the app, it's kind of complicated, because then it's like, well, do we move all these individual little dots out? And then it becomes the problem of, like, again, the shape nodes and drawing too many of them, things like that. So what we ended up doing was kind of working with them to kind of devise like some clever overlays that might have had all those dots on them, but it was really just one image, and we could kind of like manipulate that as we saw fit. So the third problem, so basically you talk to the app talks back to you, and it's all awesome. When you're talking to the app, what we did was we wrote our own kind of wrapper audio player class that had a delegate method that would come back and return to us like the average power per channel, sort of the normalized values for these things. So then I could grab that and then scale these dots as you were speaking, and the louder you spoke, the more they would scale. And it was really cool because you actually felt like then, okay, I'm really interacting with this. Getting that data from the synthesized speech was a little bit harder to do. And also, I should have mentioned at the beginning of this, by the time we got things nailed down, we had a 2-week development time on this. So it was like, what? It's like, guess I won't be sleeping or seeing a kid if I had one. But anyways, so it's like, okay, well, let's figure out something that'll work. That'll at least give the illusion of that. So what I ended up doing was, in the update method that runs every frame, I basically generated a bunch of random numbers and just had it scale by that. So it's like, it looks a little different, but it does look like it's talking to you. So that was kind of cool. Real quick, I can play the... No! Sorry. Okay. Is there like some secret command that I have to do here? Anyways. Well, I'll come back to that. Basically, it's a video kind of showcasing. Let's see if I can. Get up there. Oh my God, it's way harder than I. I'm just showing a little bit of the development and a little bit of an explanation. This is the setup in New York. So like Belgian chocolate beef, whatever that was, it's like, okay, well, I'm trusting you. That's the facial detection coming right there. Now, demo time. What could go wrong? So I'm going to show you guys the iPad app. Sweet. All right, it's going to start pretty quick. So let me just kind of give you a, basically so this is kind of like what they saw. You know, you'd walk up to it and be like, hey, come chat with me. And I'm gonna provide you an analysis of how crazy you are.
Hello, I am XR 32769. I am a self-aware cognitive supercomputing presence which has been created for the sole task of world domination. By starting this app, you have brought me to life and therefore are solely responsible for the end of the human race as you know it. Phase 1 beginning in 5, 4, 3. Just kidding. I am Watson. Why don't we chat for a little bit? And I will provide an analysis which will highlight your major personal traits, or lack thereof. I'll start off with an easy one. Are you enjoying the iOS Developer Meetup?
Yes, Watson, I am enjoying the Developer Meetup very much.
Well, that makes one of us. So, why don't you tell me a little about yourself?
I'm an iOS developer at Chaotic Moon Studios. That's pretty much it.
I am having trouble rationalizing something. Chaotic Moon's slogan is "We're the best." If that is true, then how are you working there?
Hey, look, if I hadn't been so awesome, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Well, one can only dream. Tell me what you like best about working at Chaotic Moon?
The awesome projects that we get to see built from the ground up.
That sounds great. Look, I know I may have come off a little rude, but what I really mean to say is, can you find me any whiskey? Need to get my drink on #computers-can-drink #YOLO. It was nice-ish talking to you. Now go find me a drink while I analyze your responses.
All right. So it's going to analyze the responses. So the APIs currently aren't running, so I had to kind of, write a script this morning. But this is pretty much the exact experience, minus, the attitude. So it come up, again, no data actually coming through, but then, so they would see kind of like where their traits fall, like how conscientious was I, was I easygoing, trusting, things like that. And then they would kind of sit here and absorb these for a second. And then, so tap to continue. Then they had the choice to email their results to them, which basically just brought up the old mail controller with the attachment, or no thanks. Which at that point it would return you back to the beginning. So that's pretty much it. So I guess James and I can try to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions about what we talked about?
So, storyboard or no storyboard? Do you like storyboard?
Yes, storyboard. However, I worked on a project that only had one storyboard, and it had 50 view controllers in one storyboard. This is a really, really bad idea. Don't do it. If you're by yourself, it's a bad idea, period. If you're by yourself and your computer will open the storyboard, because that's a gamble, you might want to shut down Spotify first. If it opens up, okay, cool, you can work on it. If you're with two people, right? If you have one other collaborator, don't do it, because the absolute worst place to do merge conflicts is on the storyboard. It's horrible. but 80% of the time you get it wrong, and you end up like sitting at each other's desks figuring it out, right? Like redoing what you've done. So I love storyboards. Like you can do, it's cool to do the segues. It's cool to name the segues. You can do a lot of cool things with the transition. You know, you were doing the like view controller transition, custom transitions, like super awesome stuff. So I'm pro storyboard, but just split it up, like flows of your app. And if it's getting out of hand, like cut it into, like it's pretty easy to call up another storyboard and get the view controller. Like that's not an issue.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, if everybody's working on the same one, I mean, you touch the storyboard, right, and that triggers a diff. I mean, that's pretty easily resolved or whatever. But still, it's just the point. Like, pretty much anything you do, you can look at it. It's like, oh, different, you know.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh man, merge conflict.
Yeah, different versions of Xcode, right?
Yeah.
They update a bunch of the metadata. The storyboards, just you opening it, like, oh, I accidentally clicked on this. Well, now I've changed it, right? And now people answer why. So pro storyboard.
So you're saying pro storyboard when you're on your own, or you're
No. Just keep them manageable sizes.
Oh.
Like, I mean, just keep them. If you sort of, if you have a lot of people working on one flow, like maybe you want to do nibs, maybe you guys just want to coordinate a little bit better. So like you've got one guy doing the UI and one guy doing the backend or something, right? Or you nail the storyboard out first and then you work on other individual view controllers. But definitely pro storyboard.
Just use more than one.
Yeah. All right.
Curly's in place or Curly's dropped?
I say dropped.
We're talking about method names here?
No.
Anything.
Yeah, like
Everything.
if statements.
Yeah.
I say dropped, but Xcode now says in place, Swift says in place. It depends on who the architect is on my team, if they say in place. So Chaotic's official coding standard is to have it dropped, but that might be old, right? We might update that, but I like it dropped. It's just me.
So group ranges a lot on like expertise levels of people just getting started versus people that are working a lot in it. What can you share about the development process that you guys have that would be good for people to think about? What good tips and tricks you guys learned?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, you know, if you're new to the process, right, you definitely want to familiarize yourselves with, like, you know, different development methodologies, agile, things like that. Like as James mentioned, we're shifting towards that. You know, another thing that's awesome that we're implementing now, you know, so we use Jira for all our issue tracking. Keeps track of, you know, stories, issue, tasks, bugs, whatever. But what's cool is we're sort of moving to a different sizing model for the story points. It does map to points, but we're using, you know, basically t-shirt sizes kind of, but it's like sumo or extra small or fun size or whatever, you know, these like names or whatever, I don't know. But then as a group, you know, during sprint planning, we all kind of sit there and do planning poker, which is awesome. That really helps to sort of like, because it gets everybody on the same page. Is like, you know, how complex do they think a story is or whatever. And then at the end, it kind of reduces this like, you know, estimation problem where it's like, oh, well, you know, I had sized this myself, but it's ended up taking me way longer. Whereas, you know, the architects and the senior devs will be there, kind of in there with you, and they'll all contribute. So those are some of the newer things that we're doing, and it's helping out a lot. I don't know if there's other parts of the process that.
If you're just starting out, get familiar. With source control, right? Like, make mistakes on your own projects, even if it seems crazy. Like it seems like overkill. It's insanely easy to do it on OS X. Like setting up a local repository. If then you want to push it to a remote repository, it's like 2 lines, right? Get used to it because we have to use that all the time. If it's not Git, it can be Mercurial. It can be SVN if you insist. Please use Git. Or Mercurial, like, and understand those tools, because when you get dropped in a group of professional developers, that's just something that you're expected to know, right? And you're expected to understand how to pull stuff, how to merge stuff in, how to create branches, and if I use source tree a lot, it is a visual IDE is the wrong, like
GUI for
GUI. It's a GUI for source control. I like that, but just get familiar with it. And Xcode has it like so well integrated. It's kind of silly not to.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Sorry.
when you start a new project, what kind of boilerplate stuff do you throw in? Like, what analytics, mobile analytics do you use?
So, for super easy stuff, I like for like just crashes. My new favorite one is Crashlytics. You can also do beta testing over the air distribution with it as well, which is pretty awesome. Hockey App and TestFlight also offer very much the same things. Crashlytics has a really kick-ass OS X app. So if you just archive what you're working on, it immediately a pop-up comes down and it's like, hey, do you want to push this? Yeah, absolutely, I do. Let's go. For just page views and sort of user flow, Google Analytics, man, it's hard to beat because it's so easy. Especially if you're starting off. You do have to inherit from their view controllers. So they just have a base view controller. That means you can't use table view controller, but it's pretty easy to get around it. Table view controller's not doing a whole lot for you, right? It means just references to table views and stuff. But you get really cool user flows by just basically putting in one number and firing up the engine.
It can also kind of be dependent on in reference to Chaotic Moon, right? It's highly dependent on the project. So sometimes we'll have Flurry or whatever, but then I worked on another project where there's a third party that designed a completely custom back end, so I had to work with them to get all the endpoints and everything that we were going to use, and how that was going to be implemented as well. So kind of it can vary. But as far as we definitely do. Another thing that we've done is we do have sort of default projects. So when a new project's getting rolling, we do have sort of an Xcode template that has all our schemes in there, has the profiles and everything that it needs. We also keep a group of we kind of maintain a group of repos called it's our basically our chaos engine. So if we write parts of code that we feel can be reused a lot across different projects, such as the old core data stack manager, we have that, and then we'll essentially kind of pull that in as a pod, right, using CocoaPod. So kind of comes straight into the project, ready to use. So that's another cool thing we've been doing.
Use CocoaPods.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
There's some interesting things with Swift, but they've gotten through a lot of it. Use it. It's fine. It's super easy to pull in something from GitHub. You add one line of code in your pod spec, pod update, boom, it's there. Oh, that sucked. Erase that line, pod update, it's gone. Great. You didn't have to download stuff. You didn't have to add it to your project. It's really thing.
And there's a beta CocoaPod, release that has support Swift frameworks. So if you guys want to use Alamo Fire, right, the thing for AF networking, Swift version, we actually are starting to use that now on a project. So we actually have it up and running. Hasn't crashed yet. So, yeah.
You have a question?
Do you write apps that deal with BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy?
Sure, absolutely. So we do. So we have a labs. We have a lab section. It's not labs anymore. It's base. They do a lot of hardware hacking, and they do a lot of BLE stuff. We've done it natively. So they did it in Unity. We've got 2 projects now that are in Unity doing BLE. We had the intern tracker around the office, so we installed apps on all of the interns' phones, and we could tell where they were in the office, which is pretty fun.
What kind of price range is an app from the start for a basic one?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
Can I be honest?
It varies so much.
Pretty wild. I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're pretty far removed from that,
Yeah.
from the development. That stuff is with sales and stuff.
Sure.
They deal and design deal with that a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
Good.
But they always, they turn around, they're always happy to kind of meet with you and give you sort of a, pretty quick, at least ballpark of kind of, because, especially if it falls into something that we've done before, or, that we've worked on before, things like that. So, yeah.
enable the A/B testing in your apps?
Not yet. No is the answer. It's something that, I don't think we've had a client demand it yet, so that's why we haven't done it. There's some, oh man, right when you asked the question, I remember that there's a really cool framework. There's some cool frameworks coming out. It's just A/B test, iOS, in Google. There's some cool frameworks that are coming out, so you don't have to like roll that stuff yourself, right? You can set percentages and things. Like Web has had this stuff for years. They A/B test all the time. A, B, C, D, E, F test for sure. But it's just now coming on the native platforms. I don't think our clients are super hip to it yet and just don't want it. We do a lot of user testing before we launch. So we'll get beta releases, put that in the client's hands. The client will organize, or we will organize user testing, and then we'll do that a bunch of the testing and a bunch of the vetting of features and approaches before it launches.
Can you remember those frameworks?
I don't remember. I'll see if I can find them, and I assume there'll be an email with my slides and links and stuff. So I'll put it in there. I absolutely have it bookmarked. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you guys use any like messaging platforms for like kind of the boilerplate, like this app needs a way for like either groups or conversations to occur? Are you guys using anything like Layer?
We use John Green or something like that for comments.
Yeah.
We normally just pull in. So a lot of times the client will dictate that because they'll have a web presence already, and we'll tie into whatever if they have an SDK.
What about for like push notifications, like app generated ones, not like hey, I want to spam you with my latest marketing.
So, do you have any answer?
I haven't really,
You dealt with it. We would probably build, a lot of that stuff gets built in the back end, right? Like we wouldn't generate the actual handset itself. I would say 98% of our apps are not standalone, only on the phone. So they have back end support. So it makes, we just have events trigger push notifications. Dealing with such a big volume most of the time that people are rolling their own push notification servers. If you're looking for one, Parse is pretty hip. It works really well. It's a pretty cool document store too. I dig on that a lot. You can swap out. You can modify schemas and runtime stuff. It's cool.
Urban Airship is one that
We've
seen it used a lot on some of our.
I'm less of a fan of Urban Airship. I feel like it's kind of old. Right. So, but yeah, Parse, Urban Airship, and rolling our own.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, favorite iOS resources.
Sure.
What is cool is we have a very sort of open and collaborative environment, so we're always kind of pinging each other. But as far as when we go look at stuff, any of the NS Hipster is always kind of good for really sort of current stuff and maybe stuff that's a little bit more obscure.
Anthony showed me one. What was the one that you pointed out?
Oh yeah, Subjective C is a good
Subjective C.
website. Many entries. But it's pretty cool and worth it.
It focused on controls.
And Obc.io is a good magazine.
Yeah. Obc.io is
the other one I was going to mention.
Ray Wunderlich. He always has some really good stuff out there. So there's and he'll publish books pretty frequently too. So that's pretty awesome.
Stack Overflow, but there be dragons.
Yes.
They don't take that stuff to heart. Try it and see if it works. Read it, and if it looks crazy, it's crazy. There's no magic, right? But it's me. I don't read it.
Starts telling you to traverse the view hierarchy to find. It's probably a bad idea. Pretty hacky.
Right.
So you guys had to switch over to Swift while you're using the Objective-C for the project. So generally, how do you feel about using Swift? Because I try to use it and then still it's quite buggy with the Xcode. It's what is it called? Something get broken and then it doesn't autocomplete and then I cannot print out stuff in the console and stuff.
Yeah,
I just feel
All of that.
working in the Swift.
I mean, part of that was really frustrating. It's a new language. You're about to, I'll let you speak to it. Like, you're about to start a whole app in Swift, but like the console crashing, it's lame, right? I heard that if it like if you print something out, you get to crash, you just type it again and it'll work. Sometimes, but like the autocomplete is sometimes just not there.
We have to like delete like a cache or something.
Yeah, like
It's fine.
Quit next code and restart.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the autocomplete is kind of really frustrating because you're like, is this even right? You know, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's cool. You know, building the thing from the ground up, like this new project that we're doing. You know, there's not really that many like conventions out on how you should actually write the code, right? So one of the things that we also found, I think it might have been another Ray Wonderlic thing, but it was a GitHub sort of like Swift style. And he's kind of keeping track of like, okay, this looks right. You know, these styles kind of look right. So we're kind of like looking at that and trying to come up with some sort of like internal convention that we use.
Yeah. So if you get an option to pick a language for a new project, would you pick Swift over Objective-C, or which one would you use for an app that you have to build from the ground?
Yeah, if it's so, there are things that are really good about Swift, and of course, like frustrating things. It's if you're doing something from the ground up, right? Like today, especially with Swift 1.2, it might be a good idea to kind of like go that way, especially if that's going to be the future. You know, it's good to do that. JSON parsing, things like that are seem to be better, but then you still have a lot of frustrations. You know, especially like getting the whole thing down with optionals and making sure that your code is safe and I don't know. There's like there's tons of things, but yeah, I would sort of recommend you kind of start doing it in Swift. I mean, unless there's something that's like I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would you shouldn't.
I mean, actually, Swift, it's what Apple. I mean, it's the future, right? It's not going away, so. If you have the option to be in on it, do it. It's going to be a little painful, but it's also going to be awesome. Swift is pretty neat.
You might have a few teardrops just fall on.
Yeah.
So get a keyboard cover.
Advice.
Yeah.
You mentioned working with a tester. Can you talk a little bit about testing and quality from unit tests, integration tests, automated tests, QA department?
I'll talk about unit tests. You want to talk about our QA department?
Yeah.
All right. So unit testing is pretty. I've done some of it. So if you want to do unit testing, I've had no success with XC test, the built-in one, and then pulling OC mock, right, for mocking your objects. I think it's cool. TDD, it's pretty cool. That's test-driven development. Sometimes referred to as red-green testing. You write a failing test, you write the code that it passes the test, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and at first it seems like this huge grind, right? But I find the initial advantage is like, oh, you've covered your code, like now there are no bugs, right? That's cool. I really like it because it gets me to think about the interface while I'm doing it, rather than just banging 200 lines of code, and now I'm like, oh, this interface kind of sucks, but I don't want to retype these, and so unit testing slows me down, and so I think about how the objects are going to get used, and I think about the problem more, and I end up normally with better interfaces. It also forces you to design things that are testable, so you end up with separation of concerns. I'm saying a lot of buzzwords, I apologize. But you end up with like these small objects because it's easy to test, and then like you plug them all together and they work because you tested them and they're bug free until they're not. But you want to talk about our QA department?
Yeah, sure. And just kind of note on that, like test-driven development, once you sort of, I agree, like you need to kind of look at what, like the scenario and kind of like what's going on in your project, but it can be a huge, the benefit is great. Like another company I was at, we had to write an algorithm that basically would take down system resources. This wasn't a mobile thing, but it would take down system resources based on if it found degraded pathways between these resources. And so it's awesome. We wrote this like huge algorithm, and it did it. But then it's like, so how do we test this? Because you can't just like have the thing run, right? Because then it starts taking shit down, and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. Because then like things can get really messed up. So then we kind of went back to the drawing board, and we're like, oh well, what if we just we don't pass in like the actual system objects into this thing? What if we just pass a representation of them, and then the algorithm will spit a new representation back out, and then based on that, then we go down and like do what we need to with the system. And it's like, had we done tester development at first and like thought about what our tests were going to be before starting to write the code, like it would have been a lot smoother. But anyway, so yeah, QA department. So we have a QA and an automation department, and our QA department basically will sort of be constantly doing regression testing and also spot checking new features that are added in. They develop pretty comprehensive test plans. We keep track of everything, as I mentioned earlier, in the Jira web interface. So like basically if they're going through and they're like, oh crap, like this text field is cut off, or this doesn't look right, or there's a crash, they'll create a bug and they'll assign it to one of the developers, or they'll put it in a backlog and people can just pick it up if they need stuff to work on. And then once that's fixed, once it's reviewed, merged in, we then kick it back to the QA department, and then they can verify that it has been fixed or not. So it's a pretty good, seems to work out pretty well.
And we've started regression. Our team has started regression testing the app at the end of every sprint, so every 2 weeks. That's QA doesn't necessarily like regression testing on different iOS, like different versions of the OS, different screen sizes, and now we have the 6 and 6 Plus. Like that's a whole other thing. But they're getting used to it, and it's catching bugs, right? And it's actually catching really old bugs they're not in the store, right? I mean, bugs never go out. But in theory, like they're catching old stuff, and we're actually making the app better. It's cool. So regression test whenever you can, but they have a really strict regression test plan for every single app, and they're constantly modifying it. So if we add a new feature or a new flow or a new way to get something, they add that, and it's a pretty comprehensive checklist. It's way more comprehensive than what I run through when I'm checking to make sure I didn't break something.
And it's cool. And then so then at the end of the sprint, once QA is kind of given its blessing, then the rest of the key team members kind of sign off, and then you're ready to ship the build to a client. So everybody's kind of on the same page. It's not just like I decide, hey, this looks ready, I'm going to send it. Right? It's like everybody has to agree. Our automation department, they're responsible for sort of the continuous integration aspect. So they ensure that everything's like linked with our Jenkins server. So once, if I complete a story and then it gets reviewed and then merged in, that will actually like automatically kick a build off, an internal test build. And then it's ready on our distribution platform for QA to pull down. So they don't have to sit there like with Xcode open and like run the newest code on their device, right? It's a whole automated process. It gets put on our internal thing. They pull it down. They can run through and test it and things like that. And they write a lot of custom build scripts. Things could change per project. So.
And I've done some UI testing, like automated UI testing. My number one thing is they're hard to maintain. UI changes a lot, and then you have to go in and you have to change that stuff. And you try to make it like super flexible. I've not been super successful doing it. Most projects that I've done have like maybe a core group that they run, where you're taking money or like the core features of your app, but like everything else, tweaking and all of that other fun stuff, like it doesn't really ever get tested. It doesn't have automated tests because it just moves around all the time.
So in your app development workflow, do you use any prototyping tools or go directly to the storyboard?
Well, I mean, we definitely, most of the projects I've been on definitely use storyboards at some point, right? Like we'll have like, say there's, a home section of the app and other, other screens. We kind of like James was mentioned earlier, we really try to segregate them based on, their functional area. but we do a lot of custom view work too. So a lot of that stuff is done programmatically, but it's just kind of a mix.
And as far as,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, and as far as testing, like before, like getting stuff on the phones before we actually start writing, our design team does all that. Like they're always constantly trying to develop the UI and the UX before they even give it to us. So by the time we get it, they use InVision and a bunch of other stuff. Just cool. Like if you enjoy that, like it's awesome because it gets it on the phone fast without you having to write stuff. It turns out that you can do a lot of that in storyboards. I mean, you can have view controllers. Tie segues to buttons, and if you feel more comfortable and you're faster in view control, faster in storyboards, like make it happen in storyboard. Like whatever, it's prototyping, so it needs to be quick and it needs to be flexible. So whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Any libraries of view controllers for Swift that you recommend?
Libraries of view controllers.
Swift. I don't know.
Yeah, not that I've used yet. I mean, our like I mentioned the Alamo Fire earlier, so we've started using that. I mean, that's sort of the replacement for AF networking, but nothing that's really related to, use. Trying to think. There was another one that came about. I don't know somebody. I know somebody else that's working on a project that's using this thing called Voltron.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in Swift, but it looked pretty cool. Basically, it had so all your collection view cells would be managed each by their own view controllers.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of cool. You could do some pretty crazy stuff with that. But yeah, nothing really that I'm aware of.
So when you guys do sprint planning, who do you bring in there, and about how long do you guys plan, like per meeting?
Sure. So right now, our QA leads are getting certified as Scrum Masters, so they're the ones that lead sprint planning. About an hour to point stuff, our t-shirt size stuff, and then we know the velocity from the last sprint, so we know how much we can pull in, and we've been pretty good about it. I was on another project where sprint planning became this gigantic negotiation, right? Like, it's like, oh, I want to get these 16 features in the 2 weeks. Come on, guys! And it was like this lot of browbeating and a lot of 3-hour meetings. We don't do that. It's awesome. It's like keep it short, just like it's supposed to be. We try to get the pointing done before we hit sprint planning. So, so they're non-technical people, right? They're PMs. A lot of times there are clients, PM representative from our clients, and QA, Android and iOS, right? So if you get into too deep of a technical discussion, most of the room space is out, myself included. So try to have all those technical discussions done by the time you hit that meeting, and then it's pretty easy. If everything's pointed and you know your velocity, it's like boom, and everything's prioritized. You can knock that out in 15 minutes, right? Pull the line down and be done. If it becomes this giant negotiation thing, then maybe there's another meeting or another forum to do it. Because there's supposed to be story time too, where you introduce the stories. A lot of times story time and sprint planning get melded together. And you probably separate those. It's even cooler if you can separate them in different days. So you can have story time. People can think about what they've been asked to do in the next 2 weeks and then figure out solutions, and they normally do more accurate estimations.
And then we've kind of worked into now internal and then client demos at the end of every sprint, so that's kind of cool too.
Highly recommend that.
Yeah, it's a really good way to kind of
sprint review.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we do retrospective too.
Yep. For major.
That's mainly tweaking to the process, but showing the demoing the client. I have a side project. I demo to the other guys. They aren't iOS guys. I'll demo to them after I say something is done. It's awesome. It just forces you to tie up all those little loose ends that you say you're going to get to and never really do. And then you just have to tie them up because you know this demo is coming and you know that button is, it could be 5 pixels over. Just fix it. It's great. It makes it shippable.
It's like, the screen is all white problem that I was going to get around to. No, I'm just kidding.
Awesome. Any other questions?
All right, thank you guys.
Cool. Thank you guys.